Sonic Frontiers has been out for roughly 3 months-ish at this point. First, I gotta let that sink in, cause it felt just like yesterday that the game came out and everyone was hyped for it. But without wasting any time, let's point out the fact that the combat was a major selling point of the game along, well, with the open zone gameplay too. Looking at the combat itself, it's used for a lot in Frontiers, for the bosses, the enemies, and sometimes just to mess around. But when I look at the combat, I really think it could have been a lot better. There have been many times in previous titles where combat has been presented and implemented in a Sonic game. Truth be told, I'm a huge fan of the combat mechanic in Sonic games because not everything can be just solved with a spin dash or a homing attack. So with today's topic, I'm hoping to cover the combat of Sonic Frontiers, how the combat in general can be improved along with its main uses, and how to best implement it, and lastly, how we can make the combat a stable addition to the Sonic series. Okay, so in Sonic's history for games where combat is a main feature of the game, let's just take a look at a few examples with Sonic Heroes, Sonic Unleashed, Sonic and the Black Knight, Sonic Lost World, and of course, Sonic Frontiers. Also, since we're mainly talking about Sonic himself and his combat, I'm excluding games like Sonic 06 and Sonic Adventure, where other characters had combat implemented into their gameplay style. Starting off with the earliest of the bunch, we have Sonic Heroes. Mainly known for the 3 gameplay styles with each team, Sonic himself had moves like the Rocket Excel, the Blue Tornado, and the homing attack of course. And the kick, I mean that's literally what it's just called. Overall, it's more minor additions to the game, if anything, but it's a great start to make Sonic more interesting than just having a homing attack and a spin dash. Moving up towards Sonic Unleashed, it might as well be an entirely new character, but I don't know. I mean, Sonic's still in the name, but the Werehog. Yes, obviously the best part of Sonic Unleashed being the counterpart to the fast-paced boost-style daytime stages of Daytime Sonic, we have the Werehog, which is the complete opposite of that. His stages are a lot more moderate and the Werehog himself is much slower, however what makes up for Sonic's loss in speed is his newfound strength in this form. Within the nighttime stages of Sonic Unleashed, the Werehog's gameplay is a lot more that of a beat-em-up. He has multiple options for movesets that can be performed, allowing the player to do a multitude of combos and try to make the Werehog a lot more fun, or they can just spam the same one move until the enemy is defeated. That's up to you. The Werehog can even use moves intended for combat as a form of movement, and with enough mastery of the Werehog's gameplay can become a very enjoyable part of your Sonic Unleashed playthrough. Following into the duology of the storybook series, we're going to be talking about Sonic and the Black Knight. This time Sonic wields the legendary talking sword Caliburn, who teaches Sonic the way of the knight and chivalry. Sonic over time learns to master the art of being a swordsman, thus becoming Sir Sonic, Knight of the Wind. Focusing back to the gameplay, Sonic is able to perform his regular movements like the homing attack, and still with the addition of Caliburn in his arsenal, he's able to perform quick swift strikes with his sword, and even combine the sword-like attacks with his own moves like the homing attack. Even better, he gets a super cool boost feature known as the Soul Surge. And I'm gonna leave it right here, but if you want to hear more about Sonic and the Black Knight, I actually have my full-length review, which is completely made already and completely ready for you to watch in the iCard up above. Next up we have Sonic Lost World, which is completely different because we don't need a sword or a completely new form for combat, which I believe this is a huge step in the right direction. Moving past the boost formula, Sonic has the inclusion of the spin dash, bounce, and the homing attack. And Sonic once more has a kick-like move which is able to help him fight certain enemies or even move past blocks from one of the Deadly Six, and more than once do I find myself using this instead of the regular homing attack, which is a good thing. Lastly, we have the game of all time, Sonic Frontiers. The way the combat is handled, well, I don't think I really need to cover it. I'm a huge fan of how the combat is in character, like Heroes or Lost World, where it's movements that Sonic himself can perform without some transformation or anything like that. The moves look amazing and great to perform on enemies, and seeing Sonic use his speed to his advantage is great in his own game and not just in spin-off titles like Super Smash Bros. Having other abilities for Sonic, like the side loop or the counter, just adds to Sonic's skill set. Also seeing the drop dash or the spin dash used in the counter is really fucking cool. Even better, when Sonic transforms into Super Sonic, any of his moves that he was able to perform become much stronger, and he can multiply the power of those moves and make them much more powerful and much more impactful, especially when fighting Titans. I think it's honestly what makes the Titan fights themselves so much fun for me to fight again and again, which is probably why I think they're one of the most replayable parts of Sonic Frontiers. So now that we've covered the combat history in the mainline Sonic games, I want to take a sec to talk about what I truly believe went wrong and what could be done better. We absolutely need to talk about what can be improved upon. We need to first touch upon the topic of what actually is wrong. The first thing is the skill tree. It's upgraded much too fast. By the time I'm done with Kronos Island, I end up leaving with most of, if not most of, my skill tree completed. The next thing I can touch upon is how unbalanced the combat is in this game. This refers more to how easy it is rather than how difficult. I mean, I didn't even know anything about upgrading Sonic till I reached Oranos Island, or the last island of the game. I had little to no issue with any of the enemies or even the mini-bosses or even the previous Titans before this island, and that's probably not a good sign considering I didn't upgrade Sonic at all. Another thing is the addition of the auto combos, and it also takes away any of the skill that would be needed in a gameplay style such as this one. Another thing that is pretty broken is the lack of a cooldown, or even something from Smash Bros known as stale moves, where repeating the same moves over and over does less damage. Thus, it will incentivize you to try to use different combos. One final thing to mention is the counter. In any fighting games or beat 'em up, when a counter is provided for you, you will need to require quick precision and skill to know how to use it perfectly, which means you're going to need to learn how to time it right so it's actually effective and the counter will work in your favor. In this game, well, yeah, you can hold it until someone hits you, and I guess just counter? I mean, yeah, that's it. I think the fact that you can use the counter itself to also avoid losing rings makes it pretty broken within itself. So this is definitely something that should be changed. Now that the problems themselves have been addressed, let's go ahead and talk about how we can fix them. With the skill tree being the first issue that seems to be needing fixing, I'd say you can look at games like the Insomniac Spider-Man games and give each ability from the skill tree a higher upgrade, maybe up to 3 tiers per ability. This way, the entire skill tree can be filled up as fast by the time you finish, for example, the first island. The next thing on the chopping block would definitely have to be the enemies, the mini-bosses, and the Titans. My main issue with them was that it's not even really difficult to fight them with Sonic's level 1 base stats. So my suggestion is to improve them and make it where the player will need to level up Sonic's base stats, making him strong enough to take on a certain island and the difficulties it will have. Furthermore, the Titans themselves should have a hard mode rematch. This is a concept that we've seen before in titles like Sonic Generations with the mini-bosses. So for the Island Titans, it shouldn't really be any different. Also, like before, there should be a harder difficulty so that those who want an actually difficult experience with the game can thrive. Lastly, the thing I want to talk about is Sonic himself, his combat, and honestly, the way he works in the game. I do believe stale moves is something that should be implemented in any Sonic game that involves combat within it. As I said before, the counter itself isn't really something that should be used just to block everything. It should be strictly time-based so that it's used appropriately. Another thing I would add in is something similar to Sonic Unleashed with a level up system, not just for Sonic's speed and stuff like that, but for his combat power, as well as even upgrading items and abilities such as the Side Loop. A level up system from defeating enemies could work perfectly, or just using the collectibles from the islands that are already in the game. And a fun idea could be having this collectible, which could upgrade Sonic's abilities, be something that can only be caught in Big Fish minigame. And that's mostly it. With Sonic Frontiers taking a huge leap in the right direction when it comes to implementing combat into a Sonic game, I personally cannot wait to see what's next for the Blue Blur. Hey, and welcome to the end of the video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure you leave a like, as it would be greatly appreciated. If you did enjoy this video, I'd consider subscribing, as most of my videos are pretty similar to this one, and that means you'd probably find them pretty entertaining. Many of the socials I use, like my Twitter, Twitch, and Discord, will also be in the description down below if that interests you. Thank you all so much for the recent support on the last video, and hopefully this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great one.